Is rubbing up on.
No worries. All right. Well, first question is why are you running?
Yeah, so yeah, I'm Jackson Franklin. I'm running for Congress in Indiana's 5th congressional district. The seat's currently being held by Republican incumbent Victoria Spartz. She's on her third term now, running for a fourth.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm running is because no matter what party it seems to be, there's not really representatives or even candidates for that matter that
Yeah.
really speak to the needs of the working class. So I basically I never thought I was going to be a candidate ever. I've been involved in politics for the last 10 years or so. And, but basically, I keep seeing these corporate backed candidates not speaking to the needs of the working class, not giving us a voice or a
Yeah.
seat at the table. And then guess what? The Democrats would go on to lose because guess what? It's way easier to fight for something than to just fight against the other person. You know, the lesser of two evils that we have in American politics.
Yeah.
So what we want is to give people a clear choice of like, you don't have to vote for the lesser of two evils. There's actually a vision for the future that is actually representing, fighting to represent you
Yeah.
and not just that top 1%. So I guess there's not just one thing that led me to do, this crazy thing running for Congress,
Yeah.
but it's a lot of experience that build up over time and people, asking me to run, my experience, as a paramedic that's worked on the ambulance, seeing the worst this healthcare system has to offer, and then our representative, continuing to make it worse. And then as well as just a lack of clear vision on our own side, on our own democratic politics of,
Yeah.
perennial losers who like they don't care whether they win or lose, it seems, not really trying to win. They think it's like some kind of game, and it's not, because if we lose, like untold amount of number of people die. So I want to fight for the working
Yeah.
class, not the donor class, and give a voice to those people that feel like they're politically homeless, and making sure that we can flip this seat come November.
All right. So which issues do you want to prioritize?
I would say the prior, big question because there's so much going on in the world right now.
Yeah.
But generally
It's impossible
speaking,
to name everything.
yeah. So yeah, how much time do you have? So generally speaking, I'd say one of the leading issues in our politics today is the large influence of money in politics.
Yeah.
Corporations or special interest groups that lobby our politicians, and then they turn their back on the will of the American people, which I view as treason. You were elected to serve the people. Now you are serving some other interest. You can't have two masters. So getting rid of that
Yeah.
influence of money in politics, overturning Citizens United, moving
Yeah.
to public funding of our elections. That way, it's a true democracy, or representative republic. Uh, to serve the people and not the big billionaire class, or I call them the Epstein class sometimes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, the money, like whether we talk about healthcare, climate change, gun reform, education, what you name it, right? A number of topics. A lot of it goes back down to money in politics, the way it influences. Because if there's a for-profit motive for something, they are lobbying
Yeah.
your politician against you. So that's why we need to, that's probably the chief concern. That's why I'm proud to say that this is a grassroots campaign, meaning we don't take any corporate lobby money. We don't want super PACs or, APAC money like Victoria
APAC. Yeah.
Spartz. We are unapologetically fighting for the working class, not the donor class, and, fighting for Main Street, not Wall Street. So that's probably the top issue in American politics now. Now there's so many issues, like that's just like the head of the snake, basically.
Yeah.
Most of our problems arise from that. So, as well as things that I'm very passionate about, of course, healthcare.
Yeah.
Being a paramedic, as I mentioned, I've taken veterans from the hospital back to their homes to die because they didn't have any health insurance and they didn't want to put their families in medical debt. Which, by the way,
Yeah.
medical bankruptcy is the number one form of bankruptcy in America. It's a uniquely American problem.
Yeah.
So, what I'm calling for, as well as what 70% of the nation wants, according to the polls, is Medicare for all. Healthcare is a human right. Out of
Yeah.
33 developed nations on the world, America is the only one that does not guarantee health care to all as a human right, but it's a for-profit system here. We have a
Yeah.
gratuitous, parasitic middleman between us and our doctor. All we're saying is to remove that middleman so you can get the care you deserve. So, money in politics, healthcare, and as well as just generally human rights. Now, you could fit 100 plus more things in that big bubble of human rights, but we've obviously been on the decline. I mean, you look at women's rights, for instance, or LGBTQ plus rights, or the
Yeah.
constitutional right of immigrants. Due process is under attack. Elections are under attack. Many different things I could talk about, but generally speaking, I would say those are things that I'm most passionate about. But even if I didn't mention it directly, I am fighting on all fronts, and you could see the full policy platform and sign up to volunteer and donate at jacksonfranklinforcongress.com. I am very proud to have an extensive policy platform, probably one of the most in the whole state of that I am in of Indiana, because I'm very policy forward. I'm very transparent. I'll tell you exactly what I think, and that's kind of the leader and representative that I
That's
want to
great.
be. Yeah, because people should have a right to know like what my stance
Yeah.
is on, say like Palestine or, you know, how to handle Medicare and stuff like that. So go to the website. If I didn't mention it, I promise I'm fighting just as hard for it. It's just those are the things that are on my mind currently.
All right. Let's go first with healthcare because it's one of the priorities you mentioned. What are the main policies that you want to see implemented?
So, as I mentioned, Medicare for all system, a single
Yeah.
payer system. Basically, in America, we have a system called Medicare, and it's 65 and up that get it. But it does not include dental, vision, or hearing. So, what I want to introduce, or at least reintroduce, because Senator Bernie Sanders, who's actually right over my shoulder right here with his book,
I can
he
see.
tried to have that legislation, but it of course failed thanks to the Republicans leading the House and under in the Biden administration. So include those programs in Medicare. And then all we're going to do is lower the age from 65, and it's a 4 year transitionary period. So,
Yeah.
hey, first year, everyone 18 and lower, and then bring it down to 55 included. And then it goes down 10 years until everyone's included. And boom, everyone has health care. Right now, we live in a system where 120,000 Americans die every year due to lack of health insurance. And more than 300,000, they're not dying, but they're suffering. They're going through chronic
Yeah.
pain.
Yeah.
They can't afford medications or the healthcare they need. So that is a disastrous failing system. That is the signs of like death of well, literally death. But it's like that
Yeah.
is a system that's not working for us. It's working for parasitic billionaires, these big CEOs, these elites that are taking all they can from us and our pocketbooks and our lives all for their profits. That's why our campaign slogan is proudly saying people over profits. We need a system that represents all of us, treats us with the dignity we deserve, and has a system that works for everyone and not just that top 1%. So all
Yeah.
we want to do is catch up with the rest of the developed world because we're decades back. Even President Kennedy, JFK, he said, we are decades behind this term of care for our people. You look at the UK, they had their healthcare system, the NHS, since I believe 1947, right in the aftermath of World War II. If
Yeah.
the other nations can do it, then I know for sure that the wealthiest nation in the history of the planet can guarantee healthcare to all. All we are like, and I might end on this note here. If 70% of the nation wants it, and the rest of the world has something similar, or has different ways of getting that done, we're not radicals, right? We're not extremists. This is centrist. This
I
is
don't see that.
mainstream
I have in
idea.
my country we do have universal healthcare, so uh
Yeah.
it's
Oh
not
yeah.
radical. You have the right wing supporting it. So
Yeah. Yeah. They'll try to portray us as like, oh, you crazy people. We're not reinventing the
yeah,
wheel. We're really just saying we want
socialists.
to catch up. I always compare it like imagine if we had police insurance, like you had to pay every month out of pocket to be able to call the police. Like if there was a middleman, there was a
Yeah.
middleman between us and our doctor. Imagine if there was a middleman between us and the badge. Like, oh, well, you didn't pay your insurance. That's going to cost extra. Like, no,
Yeah.
there's a guy that, whatever the crime may be, I want you to take care of this problem. We should
Yeah.
view it the same as healthcare. Like, hey, you have cancer, you're injured, you have this chronic illness. All right, here's a problem. That's why we have doctors, nurses, hospitals, ambulances. Like, why? Like, it should be seen as a public good, not just a way to extract wealth from us working
Yeah.
class people.
Yeah. All right, you also mentioned education. Before we move on to human rights, which is gonna be a lot, can you tell me some of the education policies that you would like to see implemented?
Yes, so I'm very passionate about education as well. I eventually do want to become a history teacher, maybe when I'm much
Yeah,
older,
that's great.
after politics. Well, if there's never going to be an after politics, but you know what I mean, as far
Yeah.
as being a candidate. But yes, I want to introduce or reintroduce another bill proposed by Bernie Sanders, that the Pay Teachers Act, which it's as simple as it
Yeah.
sounds. Teachers deserve, as well as all other people, a living wage for their work. So we have a minimum wage in this nation, 7.25, and it varies state by state, whatever the state wages are.
Yeah.
But we want nationally for the educational industry, basically, to have a special minimum wage. Like, hey, if you're in this industry, you have a unique minimum wage set far above our starvation wages that we have nationally. So
Yeah.
I think it's that bill was older. I want to increase the numbers, but that bill said, hey, teachers should make at least $65,000 a year, move it up, and then transition to 75,000. I think now we should move it to 75,000 and move it up to 80,000 after a period of time, just
Yeah.
because inflation, that's just how it is. Like I'm sure Bernie Sanders would agree at this point, with that exact kind of framing.
Yeah.
But it also makes sure that the support staff to our teachers are also paid living wages, at least $35 an hour, with like our paras in mind, with para educational people. So yeah, on many other things, we also have a thing called IDEA, which is Individuals with Disability Education Act, which is
Yeah.
already a law that the federal government promised to pay 40% of special needs education at the district level. Now, the federal government has never paid more than 18% of this nationwide.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is we need to enforce the law that we already have on the books. We need to make sure that the special needs community and caretakers have all the
Yeah.
resources they need and more, uh, to make sure that we're taking care of our people. I would also say on education that anyone can basically go to Germany right now and get a full ride bachelor scholarship. They view
Yeah.
education as an investment. They view education as a human right. And our president, during 1930s and 40s, FDR, he said that education is the first building block to a healthy democracy. Now our
Yeah.
education has been crumbling for decades, and now look where our democracy is now. I believe that education is a human right. Education is an investment. And our young people make up 20% of our population, but 100% of our future. So that's why I'm calling to catch up yet again with the rest of the developed world and making sure that education is a human right, and where I am calling for public college for all. We also uh, must, bail out all the tuitional debt, eliminate all tuitional debt all across the country for more than 45 million Americans. And the way
Yeah.
we're going to pay for that is, back in the 2008, we had the financial crisis. Wall
Yeah.
Street, us working class taxpayers paid to bail them out with our taxpayer money. The government bailed them out. We bailed them out. So after all this time, I think it's finally time that Wall Street bailed out the working class. So I have plans on taxing Wall Street very incrementally. It's not that much, but they have so much wealth. It's enough
Yeah.
to, within 1 year, we'd be able to wipe out all tuitional debt for all, more than 45 million Americans. And
Yeah.
that's what I propose, as well as many other educational policies. But I could talk forever about about it.
All right. Perfect. Well, let's move on to constitutional rights. Well, civil rights and constitutional rights, of course.
Okay, yeah, just generally.
Yeah, I mean, I forgot the question. Yeah, well, the plans you have on those issues.
Yeah, so the I'm gonna start this with what the other side is doing and then compare it to our plan. I'm running
Yeah,
against someone, Congresswoman Victoria Spartz,
yeah,
who last year had a town hall in Westfield, which is in Hamilton County in Indiana, and she said criminals do not deserve due process, which is unconstitutional. That's against the
yeah.
American Constitution. It says all persons are entitled to the right of due process. Does she not think that, are people are people? Does she not see them as persons? And hint, she was just talking about the brown people, people coming from the southern border, the global south. She's
Yeah,
just inherently racist, of course. What I say about Victoria Spartz on that matter is, she's an oxymoron. She doesn't make any kind of sense whatsoever. She's an oxymoron. Well, she's a moron too, but she's an immigrant that does not support immigrants' rights. She's a
yeah,
Ukrainian that does not support Ukraine, and she's a woman that doesn't support women's rights. Like she's endorsed by, pro-life America. But something that does make perfect sense is that she's a millionaire that does anything in the interest of other millionaires and billionaires, also known as her large corporate donors. So,
yeah,
on that note of constitutional rights, like she's a big fan of what ICE is doing, separating families, putting kids in cages, obviously saying like due process should be basically revoked. I strongly, of course, disagree with that. Easiest layup in the world. I believe that due process is a constitutional right. I feel like we need to give these rights to all people, whether they are American citizens or not. They should be entitled to the constitutional rights of the land. I mean, that's just common sense. We need to
yeah,
make sure that we need to have a pathway to citizenship for our undocumented brothers, sisters, and comrades to make sure that they can live the so-called American dream and make that dream a reality. We should be proud that people even want to come to this country.
yeah,
They're oftentimes more American than a lot of these people that are hating on them, the bigots that are trying to, set up group like the Klan, Proud Boys, whatever other like hate group.
yeah,
They're all undocumented immigrants are probably more patriotic than them. Those groups are nationalist. They see American supremacy, whereas the rest of the common world here,
yeah.
we view
White
ourselves as a
nationalist.
nation. Yeah, we view ourselves as a nation among nations, not a nation above nations. It's cooperation and this shared human experience of building each other up and collaboration. But they see themselves, and it's so ironic, of course, where you see like, a white nationalist and he's, like very obese, didn't pass high school, and then they say, "Oh, I have better genes than the person who is like, working their whole life and is like, they would be a doctor if they had proper resources."
Yeah,
It's like, "Oh yeah, you have better genes." Yeah, I'm sure. you know. Um so yeah, and as well as the human rights, like women's rights, recently our Supreme Court overturned a decision Roe v. Wade,
yeah,
which was already the compromised position. Like that was meeting halfway with the conservatives. So I think we need to codify Roe versus Wade stronger than ever. Make sure that
yeah,
women have control of their own bodies. We also need to make sure that the LGBTQ community recodify their rights as well because they're looking at those decisions to like overturn gay marriage, for example. So we need to codify those rights. Many other things. I can go on and on. I'll be on while we're talking about immigration. If we lived in 1945, look at Germany, Gestapo. We would not
yeah,
say, "Oh, we need to send our boys in black to empathy training," or they just need better body cameras before they commit war crimes, or defund the Gestapo. No, you'd call to abolish the Gestapo. And here in
yeah,
2026 America, we need to be fully calling to abolish ICE. They're just henchmen for the president. They're only used to terrorize the people of this nation. There's no retraining them. We need to just, there's no purpose. They are a small part of the customs and border protections, and the CBB is a small part of the overall Department of Homeland Security. There's
yeah,
no reason to harass the people that are in the nation. We just need to make sure that they have the resources they need to live a long and
yeah.
healthy life. No more kids in cages.
Great. Now let's move on to foreign policy. Of course, the issues with Ukraine, Palestine, and all.
So yes, with going on in Palestine, is of course a genocide. Many politicians that are lobbied, let's say by AIPAC, much like my opposition, Victoria Spartz, as well as
Yeah,
more than 90% of Congress, they are lobbied by this group, and it destroys American democracy, and it enables both sides of the aisle, Democrat or Republican, to they're serving the interest of another nation before the interest of our nation, and as well
yeah,
as standing up for oppressed people all over the world, whether it's in Palestine, Iran, or even the oppressed people here at home. So recently, Congress just passed $3.3 billion to Israel to go bomb schools and hospitals over there. I say we need to use that money to build up and invest in schools and hospitals over here, as well as pay restitution to the hundreds of thousands of families, perhaps millions of families that have been devastated by this genocide in Gaza. And this, we need to stop the settler colonialism of the West Bank. We need to
yeah,
stop this illegal, immoral war in Iran. I'm a combat medic in the Indiana Army National Guard. I do not want to see my brothers and sisters in uniform continue to die for the sake of another nation just
yeah,
because they have dirt on our president for being a pedophile in relation to Jeffrey Epstein, who is confirmed worked for Mossad, which is Israeli CIA.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, we need to uphold human rights. We need to bring back international law. If anything that Israel and the American government have taught the world and taught Russia and China is that international law is a joke. It's meaningless. Like who's going to stop us? The UN? The UN doesn't go ahead and send your army. Oh yeah, you don't have an army. Okay, shut up. Like we need to make sure that the international humanitarian law is upheld. I would be in favor of giving the UN some teeth to actually make sure that there is no genocide ongoing. There's 5 permanent members, the U.S. being one of them, Russia, China,
Yeah,
France, and the UK. We need to get rid of that because if any one of these nations is just committing violent, horrific crimes against humanity, and there's no one, they just vote it down anytime. So we need to make sure that it's a rules-based order and to stop the suffering and stop World War III that is ever looming. And basically, the UN is now
yeah,
effectively the next League of Nations in more ways than one. No, failures. It's proving that it's
yeah,
ineffective. But
yeah,
with Ukraine, Slava Ukraini, Russia is a much like how America is being, showing off its imperialism in the Middle East. Russia is obviously showing off its imperialism in
yeah,
Ukraine, and we speak about ethnic cleansings. You can't, wash it away. Russia is committing ethnic cleansing in the eastern side of Ukraine. They're literally taking tens of thousands of children of Ukrainian and descent and like sending them to Russia, changing out their legal names, abusing them if they speak
yeah,
Ukrainian. They're forcing them to forget their culture and their ways, and their parents are either dead or misplaced or missing their children. But like it's hard to ever tell if they're ever going to come back home. So that is ethnic cleansing. We must penalize them economically and use diplomacy to make sure that we get the children back, both in Ukraine, both in Palestine, Iran, Lebanon, many other places, and yeah, uphold human rights across the board. And obviously, I mentioned China. So Russia is doing Ukraine, America, Israel, the Middle East. Now China is even eyeballing. They just recently, this last month, changed their policy to Taiwan of like reduce. I believe the words were in their doctrine on Taiwan, like we need to reduce Taiwanese nationalism. Now they're saying it's a big word change, and this is like testing out the waters. Like we need to like enforce like by enforce a reduction of Taiwanese nationalistic
yeah,
ideals. And it's like, okay, well, that's a little word change there this year. It was there for decades, to my knowledge. So they are gearing up for Taiwan. I feel like the people have a right to their own sovereignty. As someone who
yeah.
is an American,
Self-determination. Yeah,
self-determination, exactly. Like during 1776, the American Revolutionary War for Independence against the British Empire, we went
yeah,
from like 10 years, like before we declared independence, we were fighting just for like, hey, no taxation without representation. And in that short period of time, like the word American was not being used that quite. And then in that time,
Yeah.
they were like, you know what? I am not British. I am my new national identity. So if we could change it like that and be proud Americans, just like this new identity is born, then places like Taiwan, places like Palestine, and many other places have a right to self-determination. They've developed their own culture, their own ways, and
Yeah.
it's their choice. Don't let just because a nuclear power is threatening, we have to come together as a security of, democratic nations with liberal principles. We have to come together as a united front to tackle imperialism wherever it arises.
Yeah. All right. Well, the last question would be, what's your analysis of Trump's second term in office?
Without doubt, it's a fascist regime, but it's incompetent evil. He is fumbling over himself. Like Stephen Miller is a fascist for being the sake of a fascist. Trump is mainly
Yeah.
doing it for grift and personal power. Like he doesn't care for like fascism is a tool for wealth, whereas for Stephen Miller,
Yeah.
wealth is a tool for fascism, and those lines cross and they butt heads. So if the fascism imposes on his wealth, he's not going to do it. But if it doesn't matter, then he will do it. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, human rights have been being stripped away from across the board. We are moving into the era of, more authoritarianism. And, people are worried here in America if we were going to have elections this year. People ask me all the time, like, you're
I'm
running for
worried too.
Congress.
I'm not American, but I'm worried too. I'm concerned. I tell many candidates, of course, Democrats, I tell them that my main concern is that if you win this election, I mean the Democrats win the both the House and the Senate, uh he's not, I mean Trump's not gonna recognize the results. And the hypothetical idea of a civil war, uh you know is there, and it gives you like goosebumps because it can happen actually. You
Yeah,
see
I
that,
think, yeah.
what's going on with ICE on the streets, it can happen. It can totally happen.
Definitely. I think it would
Yeah.
look much like how the Troubles looked in Northern Ireland. It's not going to
Yeah.
look like the first, American Civil War where there's like North versus South. It's going to be way more fractured. It's going to be like a little here in this
Yeah.
neighborhood, and like it's going to look like, guerrilla warfare. It's going to be like your
Yeah.
neighbors, like you don't know what side they are, refugees going every which way across the nation. And, you know, I'd say we're closer to that than we are to like a perfect Democrat. Like it's so fragile. Democracy, we always grew up like, hey, you're never more than one generation from losing your democratic rights.
Yeah.
And we grew up like, okay, yeah, the adults are in charge. It's like no one's gonna like, why would anyone get it? Yeah, no, I urge the rest of the world, the rest of the developed world, if you are in a so-called democratic nation, fight for democracy all the time. Act like it's always under attack because truth is it is. It's always under attack from people who wish to tear
Yeah.
it down. And don't get complacent. See what's happening here in America and realize that the fight for oppressed people is a nationwide fight, in a worldwide
Yeah.
fight. And you got to stand up for your values and you got to make sure you're doing what's right, or else you end up with a fascist dictator that strips away your right to be, exist as you are, whether you're a woman, a person of color, a religious minority, whatever it may be. Fight for your right
Yeah.
to exist because, without that fight, it slips away. Don't ever get complacent. So, on the note of the second Trump term, it's slipping away. Like people got complacent. I think they rose to power largely because, and I mentioned this for Indiana, we ranked in our state, which is like, central east of the nation.
Yeah.
Uh, we rank 50th out of voter turnout. Like out of the states, we rank 50th in Indiana.
Yeah.
So, and I think plus DC. So I think actually there was one state that's lower than us, and then DC's higher up on the list. But
Yeah.
we rank near the bottom. So we're not a red state, we're not a blue state. We are a gray state. So what
Yeah.
we need to do is have politicians that energize the base to even want to go out to vote in the first place. And that's what this campaign is doing. We are giving a reason for the people to come out and vote. We're not more if you're tired of politics as usual, this is not that. This is bold progressive leadership, unapologetically fighting for working people. And we need to get people out and people motivated, or else we're going to lose our democratic rights, our human rights, the Constitution. Everything's at stake. If we lose even the primary, if we like the Democrat versus Democrat election,
Yeah.
millions will die. Because if you get a pro-genocide Democrat in there, you know who can't tell the difference between whether the bombs are red or blue? The dead children in Gaza. So we need to make sure we're standing up for our principles in this primary, in this election, and we need to fight for what's right for the sake that it's right. So if anyone wants to get involved, please go to jacksonfranklinforcongress.com, and we need to create a system that places people over profits.
All right. Well, thank you very much for everything, for answering
Thank you.
all my questions. I'm going